Welcome back. It is Hard Facts 92.3 Nigeria Info. Sam Oracle Chinedu here. The awesomeness you listen to is Princess of China by Coldplay featuring Rihanna, and that's from 2011. Well, that was back when Rihanna still used to sing. I'm not saying she doesn't sing now, but her fans have been begging her for close to a decade to please give them something. How good can you be to stay away from your art for close to 10 years, maybe even more, and still make money from it? Every summer there are sales of her music, and she really hardly drops anything except soundtracks to motion pictures. That is success. Think about it in these terms. Imagine I quit radio or media and decades later getting paid for the work that I've done. That's kind of life I want to live. Welcome. It is hard to be my dream for conversation for long. It's about law, about politics, about representation, to make it to legislature and judiciary. Executive might find its place somewhere, and well, the common man, that just happens to be you and I, will also find our place. Well, Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan, the suspended senator representing Kogi Central, has stated that she will resume legislative duties in the Senate on Tuesday, that's today, following a court order directing her recall to the Red Chamber. The lawmaker disclosed it in a video shared on social media, which trended. On Sunday, she thanked her supporters for standing with her. "I thank you for your support," she said. "I'm glad we are victorious today. We shall resume in the Senate on Tuesday, by the grace of God." Now, her comments followed Friday's judgment by a federal high court sitting in Abuja, which declared her 6-month suspension from the Senate as unconstitutional, excessive, and a violation of her constituents' right to representation. Justice Binta Nyako, who presided over the matter, ruled that the suspension lacked constitutional backing and ordered the immediate reinstatement of Akpoti Uduaghan. The court, however, also found the senator guilty of contempt for a Facebook post described as a satirical apology addressed to the Senate President Godswill Akpabio. And I've said that the case of Natasha is the clear distinction between fame and infamy. It is about being famous and infamous. That means that a person can be famous, popular, but if they are infamous, that's another situation. And while I'm not pointing fingers or mentioning names, it's sad that for the foreseeable future, at least the not so distant future, every time Natasha's name comes up, we will associate her with this controversy more than representation. Unless something else happens that blows us away and then we forget. But I'll introduce my guest shortly. When the court ruled, this was the reaction of a well-known activist in Nigeria. She was not pleased, and this is what she had to say.
I think the judiciary should sit down and look at itself and ask itself, why has it become the willing tool, the willing oppressive tool of corrupt politicians who think that they are more than other Nigerians and they can do whatever it is that they need to do? This is not justice. The court has the right to say the same Senate that refused to obey the courts when they were going to suspend her is the same Senate she's given the power for them to recall her. A quasi able to say that this is that has been done, that she not be saying that she should go back and sue.
So that she's an activist, and it was illegal. The court should not have told the Senate to recall her, because by doing that, it justifies the position. The man who answers the questions is Chief Festus Oguche. He's a legal practitioner, public affairs, the one who brings clarity to the position. Thank you for good for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me, as always.
How you doing, sir?
I'm all right, very okay. It's been wet all day.
Yes, indeed.
Yesterday was the same thing. And then I heard in the news about some complaints, particularly that lady that said that they are stock in the houses.
Yes,
People
indeed.
are stock in their houses, sale not going on. Times can't stop nature press itself.
True,
yes.
But we must make plans. I mean, that's why we have smart people able to feel like this.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. So, Chief Oguche, I'm going to ask you a question that I know will not be easy to answer, not because you don't have the answer, but based on your position. Would you say that justice has been served in this case?
Well, if there are any issues flowing from that case, emanating from it, regarding the use of the words, semantics, it's just a matter of semantics, as far as I'm concerned. If anything is found to be unconstitutional, how do you label it? it's a nullity. It's an illegality. So no matter the words his lordship had used, Binta Nyako, whether to ask the National Assembly to recall her or whatever. Apparently, that's what it is, going by what the lady just said. I don't think it really matters, because if it is unconstitutional, it means that it never existed. You don't have the right to do it. And of course, there are precedents regarding suspension and the manner of suspension and the limits of that suspension on decided cases of the Court of Appeal, series of cases there. And it's rather very annoying that the Senate will go out of its way to suspend somebody for 6 months when precedent has already been set by law. They don't have any justification to do that, because the limit, they say, is 14 days, and there are about 4, 5, 6 cases to that effect, and all these cases have not been set aside. There's a recent case of the Court of Appeal. I think it's an Abdul Mumini Jibrin, who was suspended for 180 days for accusing the House of Representatives of padding the budget.
Yeah.
The Federal High Court nullified it and said, no, you don't have the power to suspend a legislator for a period exceeding 2 weeks.
Is that Ningi? Senator Ningi, I think.
There's Abdul Mumini Jibrin.
Okay.
That's it. There's also Alhaji Muhammad Abubakar, who was suspended by the Jigawa House of Assembly. There's also the one of Rifkatu Dana, which is the Locus Classicus. It's a case conducted by Femi Falana, which is the Locus Classicus for establishing the limit by which the legislature can suspend its member. The issue of suspension is not within really the forte of the legislature. It's something that should advance towards maybe seeking for ways to get a member to act accordingly, with their proceeding rules, their rules of procedure and all that. And to have recourse to the provisions of the Constitution that allows them to have that kind of authority will not be very, very okay as far as I'm concerned. But then, people should not necessarily be punished, but be treated in the manner that they deserve if they go out of the rules. Even as a lawyer, we have our rules of professional conduct, and lawyers are expected to abide by those rules. And if you depart therefrom, you must suffer 1 or 2 inconveniences. But it shouldn't be a punishment, so to speak. And it's not something that can be deployed by the legislature as an instrument of victimizing its member who had departed out of its way. Then in the Natasha case, you discover that she had not actually done anything wrong.
Yeah.
It's just a simple case of vendetta, nothing more. So no matter the words used by his lordship, it's immaterial for the fact that I said it is unconstitutional, and going by the precedents that's already existed on the matter, it also tells anybody that what she meant is that she is already restored.
Okay.
And it doesn't require the National Assembly or the Senate recalling her before the judgment should be effected. Maybe she did it out of sheer courtesy to the National Assembly.
Yes, I agree that it's a question of semantics. And Chief Oguche, that there would always be need to argue the English language, right? That's always going to happen. People are always going to...
Especially when it comes to decisions of Nigerian courts.
Exactly. My position when I first heard this was, I had a problem with the word reinstatement, right? Aisha Yusufu said she had a problem with recall. So these are all how the point was expressed.
Yes.
But if there are references, there have been examples before now of people who were suspended and the law stood against it, both at the federal and state legislative houses.
So many of them.
Where is the place of accountability? How are there so many cases? This is not a trailblazer. There are examples to pull from. And then the Senate pulls this off and nothing happens.
That's one of the sordid reality of our political existence, that people do not respect the law. Once a precedent is set, you follow it in any other thing you want to do. And surprisingly, you find the Senate trying to flex muscle over what had been condemned to be illegal by the courts. There are so many of the cases. You can begin to recall them, to mention them one after the other. There's Femi Okoronu of the Ogun Central Senators, who alleged that the senators were planning to impeach Obasanjo, and he was suspended.
For how long?
For about 2 months or thereabout. But then the court said, no, you don't have that power, you don't have that authority. There's Joseph Waku, you remember him? The PDP Benue Northwest. And he suggests that a military coup was about to be inflicted on Obasanjo. Also, Zeribe, was involved in it, was alleged to have involved in a 22 million naira fraud. Series of them. So the precedent is already set. It's a tradition.
Yeah.
The problem with our country is that we allow people to get away with the law, with offenses that attribute themselves directly and point their fingers directly on the face of the law. People should pay for some of these indiscretions, as far as I'm concerned, because if there's already a standing precedence, particularly a decision of the courts, every institution of government, every arm of government is bound by it. You don't necessarily have to go to court. That was what happened to the local government. For a very, very long time, the Supreme Court had given a decision and said, see, you don't have the power as a governor to remove elected local government councillors. The Honorable Justice Nikki Toby made it very, 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 very succinctly. He laid it bare on the floor. That, look, you don't have the power to remove an elected local government chairman. You don't even have a power to put in a caretaker committee. That was during the Obasanjo era. But at the end of that judgment, we saw them doing this and that and all that until the recent judgment of the Supreme Court. I can bet you that very soon, when the tables turn, tables could turn.
There will be caretaker.
And you begin to see caretaker and see governors begin to interfere in the running of local governments.
Let's take a break. After that break, of course, there are more questions and hopefully more answers. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's still Hard Facts, 92.3 Nigeria Info. Sam Oracle Chinedu here. We're talking about the return of Natasha to the Senate, which is supposed to be today. And this follows a federal high court ruling in Abuja where her 6-month suspension from the Senate was unconstitutional, excessive, and a violation of her constituents' right to representation. My guest still is Chief Festus Oguche. He's right here. You're welcome once again, sir.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's look at antecedents, precedents, and all that this, means, represents. What do you think that the handling of this Natasha case means for legislative independence?
Well, the independence has always been there. It's there in the books, anyway. But in actual practice, I don't know to what extent it's been adhered to. But I know very well that the Senate, in this case, shot itself in the foot. The controversy emanated from a very simple request that she would be allowed to sit where she was as at that time. After that, the seat had been shifted to another place by the Senate authorities by their rules of their legislative business. They could be right in that, because once there are defections, there are some bit of adjustments that should be made ordinarily. But then she requested that she be allowed to speak, and she was disallowed. That was where the whole thing took off. And we expected that the Senate constitutes of senior persons and persons that are mature in character. We expected that the matter be handled and with every dint of maturity, to the extent that they treat her maybe as somebody who wants to sustain her rights, being a woman also, in an environment that is dominated by men, particularly in a situation where the certain aspects of feminine rights are not well protected, and the matter flared up. And she was suspended initially. Then there was an order of court stopping them from going ahead to do that. But the committee sat in defiance of that order to still suspend her. And I think that's where they got it all wrong, because first of all, they disobeyed the order of court, saying that the court has no jurisdiction over them. Their own jurisdiction relating to their rules is exclusive to them, which I totally and completely disagree. It cannot be exclusive to them. If they go outside the realms of their rules, or if they go into violating fundamental rights, it's subject to judicial interpretation. Then on and on. Then lately there was a criminal charge against her. I think this thing should have been nipped in the bud.
Yeah, it should have.
And they took it so far that it enabled the lady to go all the way to the Parliamentary Union. And that's the appropriate place for her to go. And surprisingly, the Department of State Security Services came and said, why did she go there in the first place? And said they will investigate, which is her own right.
Oh, my.
So it's all that. But then I think the most important lesson we learned from it is that these arms of government and institutions of government must abide by judicial orders. They must be bound by the judgments of courts. If they had looked at the processes and the cases, they have a legal department at the National Union, at the National Assembly, that should have advised them. Even if they are not aware of the existence of these cases, they would have looked at the books, at the law reports, they have all of them there, and seen that you cannot suspend her beyond the given period of time.
Okay.
Probably the suspension would have survived without necessarily having the court to nullify it or to lampoon the members of the National Assembly for going beyond their constitutional and legislative powers.
Chief Oguche, let's attempt to tackle this from the root. Why can't lawmakers sit anywhere? And this is beyond Nigeria, right? Legislative houses across the world, there is a disparity between minority and majority in the house. The sitting arrangement is sacred, right? Once there's majority, you come in, you can almost tell who stays where. But why do we have that? Why is it by design that the lawmaker cannot just sit anywhere? It's one house, everybody's going to hear me. There are microphones everywhere. Why is that sitting arrangement important in legislature across the world?
It is a tradition of parliament. It's established all over, just as you rightly said, all over the world. I think it's something that we got from the British tradition. You can tell if you look at the seating arrangement.
Yeah, the Brits, their house, even the architecture of the house.
Exactly.
Yeah, favors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can tell who is a Labour and who is Conservative.
Yeah.
And on and on. Even in the United States, the Democrats and the Republicans. And it's essentially meant to have to create synergy amongst members, because most times they go by votes.
Yeah.
If you are scattered, if you're a member of a particular political party and you're scattered in different parts of the legislature, it will be very difficult to cohere, to have a cohesive authority over yourselves. Sometimes they even pinch themselves. You cannot pinch somebody who's far away from you. So it's a tradition. It's a tradition, and I guess Natasha's grievance, her vex essentially, was that she was put in a very obscure place somehow, and she wanted to be somewhere where she'd be in the limelight. She's a beautiful woman, so what do you expect?
And then, that has nothing to do with anything cheap. But the thing again is, I know that it seemed there were underlying tensions, right?
Yes.
Which this was an opportunity for her to vocalize.
And those tensions erupted all the same.
Another thing is, and this is the problem, I always talk about the expression Nigerian factor, right? Things could work anywhere, but when it comes to Nigeria, it seems like we need a different set of rules for it to function here. Now, while you've talked about the disparity and the seating arrangement across legislative houses across the world,
all over the place,
in Nigeria, where defection is more frequent than other parts of the world, our seating arrangement changes just as frequently.
Mm-hmm. Just like that.
Because it was defection that led to this. Mm-hmm. There were defections, I think, a day before. And thanks to that, seating arrangement had to be arranged.
Somehow.
So, do we need a different set of rules for our own seating arrangement because of the frequency of defections?
I think you raised a very good point, and people should look at it critically, because you don't find those kind of defections with the Congress in the United States.
Yeah, they don't defect like
any
that.
parliament in Australia. You seldom find people defecting, because defection is very, very profound. It's not easy to change from one ideology to the other.
It's almost like betrayal.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
You come yesterday, and then today you're sitting somewhere else. Everybody looks at you like, what is going on?
Especially for those who are in the legislature. That's why the Constitution took very good care of it. But see how they have turned it upside down. That if you defect, you lose your political party, you go for another election. But they keep defecting from one place to the other unjustifiably, and they are still there, sitting pretty in their positions. So it is something that we should look at. And also, it's not just that area. We tend to defy the law in our practice of democracy. This constitution has been so relegated that people are no longer interested in it. The gentleman who discussed with you before now was lamenting over the absence of members of Rivers State representation at the constitution. How do you expect Rivers people to come? Their place is not democratic. That's it. Okay, will you send the administrator to go and represent them there?
Well, our lawmakers at the National Assembly are not exactly under the purview of the emergency rule, so they could have gone.
They are within the emergency rule because that's where the constituencies are. For you to get to the National Assembly, you must have your roots from your constituency, the base from where you come from. So why would you expect Rivers State to be there when Rivers State is not practicing democracy?
The emergency rule
not under democratic rule.
Is a temporary arrangement. The Constitution is supposed to be permanent. So the absence of representation,
I like a logic,
right, from an epoch making events such as that for a temporary arrangement is literally a crime.
I agree with you, but it's one of those misnomers we find in our constitutional development, our democratic tradition that should stop. We're now talking about Natasha. We're talking about people abusing the law. We are talking about people flaunting the law unnecessarily. And the members of the National Assembly may not have any reason to adhere to judicial precedents in appropriating the punishment for Natasha, and they can do it for as much as 6 months. After all, somebody had been removed, an elected governor is removed, and somebody's sitting pretty in his position for 6 whole months, and nobody's saying anything about it. And they tell us it's part of the Constitution. So where do you place your fingers on the attitude of our people towards particularly in democratic dispensations. It tells us a lot about our readiness and preparedness to sustain the system for a very good period of time.
Oh, well.
And it's not a very good. It's not so good for precedents and for tradition.
Yes, indeed. I thought we had more time, but I've just been informed that a program comes up now. But let me quickly take a message. Afternoon, Sam. It's regrettable that River State, once a beacon of hope and progress, not just oil and gas, but in all facets, has taken a drastic downturn. Okay, that's for the previous conversation. Good evening, Mr. Sam, and barrister in the studio. Senator Natasha's resumption of legislative business is a welcome development because the Senate acted more than their constitutional power. How can you suspend the senator for 6 months, depriving her from representing her constituents? Or one it says, I mean, that's the biggest point at it is the fact that her people had been deprived of representation for that duration. Finally, Chief, what needs to happen moving forward to ensure that this does not happen again?
That the members of the National Assembly, not just legislatures, institutions of government are strengthened and they obey the law and abide by the law. Those of them that defy the law should be punished. Representation is a fundamental right. That's what a lot of people do not understand. If you deny the people of Emuoria their representation at all levels of government, it's a violation of their fundamental rights to participate in the government.
Who punishes them?
The law punishes them. We have judicial institutions that take care of criminal acts. If there is a particular precedence of the courts, the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, or any court for that matter, stopping a certain kind of activity, and you go and defy it, you go to jail. It doesn't take the Attorney General nothing, for instance, to file a charge against you. That's how these systems develop to this level. And everybody is bound by the law. People respect the law because they look at it as sacred. You cannot establish a system that is anchored on peace and security and good governance if people defy the law arbitrarily. You know, if you leave everything to them, or if the institutions are very weak, that they can be manipulated, they can be ensconced into personal and individual whims and caprices. That's the wrong way to go about it. And that's why our democracy appears to be failing.
Oh, well, I wanted to say it would seem that the law lacks the will, but I wouldn't say that. So hopefully...
recently, the Attorney General of the Federation filed a charge against the same Natasha we are talking about.
Okay.
You know, and that's how the law operates.
We're out of time.
So that while he can file a charge against Natasha, he can at the same time file a charge against Senator Akpoti,
the Senate President,
to balance the issues. That's how the law operates, and that's why it is blindfolded. It's not a respecter of persons.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Chief Oguche, for your time.
Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure doing this.
Thanks for inviting me.
A program comes up now. 6 brings the news. After that, it's open season. Stay with us.